Welcome, everybody, to Freelance Writing Direct. I'm your host, Estelle Erasmus, the author of Writing That Gets Noticed, Find Your Voice, Become a Better Storyteller, Get Published, and it is now a course at NYU and an elective towards the journalism certificate. Every week, I speak with novelists, with authors, with writers of every niche to talk about their tips, their tricks, their strategies, and how the sauce is made, including creative advice. I'll talk about essays and articles and share my own experience from 3 decades of publishing. So join me every week and grow your business and build your craft with Freelance Writing Direct. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, and follow along on Substack, where I share special clips for subscribers only at estelleserasmus.substack.com. I'm so happy to introduce Wade Rouse, aka Viola Shipman, to the program, and a little bit about Wade. He is the USA Today Publishers Weekly and #1 internationally best-selling author of 17 books, including 5 memoirs and 12 novels. His new novel, The Page Turner, will publish next spring from HarperCollins. Wade's books have been translated into nearly 25 languages and have been bestsellers across the world. His novel, The Secret of Snow, was recently optioned for a TV movie by the producers of the popular Netflix series Ginny Georgia. He chose his grandmother's name, Viola Shipman, as a pen name to honor the working poor Ozarks seamstress whose sacrifices changed his family's life and whose memory inspires his fiction. Wade's books have been selected multiple times as must-reads by NBC's Today Show, as well as Michigan Notable Books of the Year. His memoirs and novels have been featured in the Washington Post, USA Today, and on Chelsea lately, and chosen 3 times as Indie Next Picks by the nation's independent booksellers. Wade was a finalist for the Goodreads Choice Awards in Humor. He lost to Tina Fey, and was named by Writer's Digest as the #2 writer, dead or alive, we'd like to have drinks with. Wade was sandwiched between Ernest Hemingway and Hunter Thompson. Wade's most recent novels were The Wishing Bridge and Famous in a Small Town, both instant national bestsellers, as well as summer and winter book picks by Good Morning America, Reader's Digest, and Katie Couric. His most recent memoir, Magic Season, which detailed how the love of baseball and the St. Louis Cardinals was the only thing to bond him and his Ozarks father, was a Michigan Notable Book of the Year, a Barnes & Noble Father's Day selection, a USA Today Summer Reading selection, and a Best Book of Summer by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Wade is a noted humorist whose nonfiction has been selected as part of the American Library Association's inaugural Rainbow List, recognizing outstanding books with significant and authentic LGBTQIA+ content for readers. A former journalist, magazine writer, and people reporter, his writing has appeared in a diverse range of publications and media, including Coastal Living, Time, All Things Considered, Good Housekeeping, Parade, Salon, Forbes, Writer's Digest, and Publishers Weekly. Wade hosts the popular Facebook Live Literary Happy Hour, Wine and Words with Wade, every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. on the Viola Shipman author page, where he talks writing, inspiration, and hope, takes readers on tours of the places that inspire his novels, throws costumed monthly office parties, and welcomes best-selling authors and publishing insiders. So it's such a pleasure to welcome Wade, aka Viola, to the program. We met at the Irma Bombeck Writers Conference, where I was faculty, and he gave the most amazing keynote speech that ended the conference and had everybody in both tears and laughing, talking about his background and the impact of his grandmother on his life, who he uses as his pen name for his novels. And he's written so many novels. I have two of them in front of me, Famous in a Small Town and The Charm Bracelet. And I'm going to devour all the rest of them. And he is so prolific. But the reason that he uses the pen name of his grandmother, and it almost like chokes me up to say this, is he wants to honor her and have her have a legacy in his name. And so, wow, Wade, reading your work, it is full of the things that I love: craft, history, themes, through lines, and really tells a story and takes us on an adventure. So you started out as a journalist. I'm a journalist. I love journalists. And you moved into writing with the support of your partner of over 25 years, Gary, who also is fantastic and is your manager. And can you tell me about that feeling of getting your voice out in a book on the page your first time, not just as a journalist, not just as a communications professional?
It's it's a biggie, as you know. It's something that I never thought would happen. As I said at Irma, I did believe that there was this like little golden key that was handed around New York City and only given to certain writers, and I'd never be one of them. It was, being a journalist, and you know this, helped me incredibly because one, you are writing every single day, you're writing on deadline, you're editing as you write, you're honing your craft without really thinking that you're honing your craft. And it gets you in a mindset of writing. And I loved being a journalist, but I also loved longer form writing. And at Northwestern, where I got my master's degree, I did magazine writing and publishing. And I just felt that kind of call to do longer pieces. And it started with magazine writing, which I think started to help me find my voice. As a journalist, we're not supposed to have one. And so it's hard because I always really wanted to write memoir. And it took me, 3+ years to write my very first memoir, America's Boy. And the biggest difficulty in that was kind of channeling that voice that I have, that you have, that we all have. But I was taught not to do that. I believed that I needed to write kind of what I thought would sell or what people wanted to read. And it takes a lot to do that. And I have to say, when I first got a galley of America's Boy, I just sat at home and cried because you hold the cover, you touch it, it's actually a realization of everything coming to fruition, not only the hard work, but all of your fears being, put aside. And I do that with every book. And that never changes. You still feel this incredible sense of accomplishment and seeing your name on it, or in my case, my grandma's name on it as well.
It's so wonderful because you're both prolific and profound. So you write so much. I mean, how many books have you had now? And you have more in the, I think you have a deal for 4 books coming out, right?
Yeah, I've written 12 novels and 5 memoirs, and it started much more slowly. I started writing nonfiction and didn't have, as I talked about at Irma, I didn't have any contract for those. I would write it basically on spec, hoping that they would be published. And my agent, my great agent, Wendy Sherman, always found a home for them. And then I transitioned into fiction, and that really took off, not only in the US, but internationally. And there was a calling for more and more books. And I was doing, over the past 3 years, 2 a year, a summer book and a winter novel, which is, you can imagine, which was a lot. So I've taken a little bit of a step back for sanity's sake, just I need more time to write. I need more time to think about what I'm writing. I need more time at home. I need more downtime. I think all of that helps the end result. So I've kind of slowed that down a little bit. But yeah, I've signed a new 3-book contract. So there'll be one out a year for the next few years.
This is fantastic, and the world is just awaiting more of your words. I know I am. So when you write memoir, right, you're writing for the POV of you. It's you. And then when you're doing novels, you have multiple POVs, and it's women for the most part, strong women, women who have challenges, but still women with heart and with wants and going through things. How is it in writing the different POVs? Is it harder to write the novels or harder to write memoir, and why?
Wow, that's a great question. Now, I think that both have helped the other. When I was writing memoir, my inclination, because it's so deeply personal, I was writing about growing up gay in the Ozarks. I was writing about my family. I was writing about the loss of my brother. I was writing about, my second memoir was my work at a prep school, in which I was treated badly by, very well-off women. I was writing about my life so personally and people I knew that I was very, very afraid to be that honest. So if your inclination as a writer and a person is to protect yourself and try to make it fiction or to make it a romantic clef, something that kind of distances. And it was the worst thing I did. I wrote America's Boy for a year. I showed a draft to Gary. I kept it very close. And he said, "This sounds nothing like you." I mean, nothing like you. If you dropped it on the street, I never would have known that you had written it. He goes, you talk a lot about voice. I read Anne Lamott, I read Stephen King. It's as we all do, as much knowledge as I think we become sponges. And I just had to start from, the point of me just sitting down and almost telling myself all of those stories I've told myself my whole life that I'd never shared. And it's hard to channel that voice. And once I got it down for memoir, which is it's a mix for me of humor, heartbreak, and honesty. I always call it the 3 H's. Once I was able to do that, it flowed. I believe in funny. I believe in being brutally honest. I believe in never finger pointing in nonfiction, but always kind of doing this, trying to seek to understand. And once I did that, memoir flowed, I think, beautifully for me. And then when I transitioned to fiction, I couldn't get it. It's an entirely different animal. It's entirely different structure. You're making up characters, whole cloth. The story and through line is very difficult because you don't know it. You didn't live it. So it was a much bigger challenge than I ever imagined it would. And my first novel, which you have the charm bracelet, also took me 3+ years to write. And I kept sending it to my agent over and over again, and she kept saying, "You're not getting the point of views of these. You're writing about women, and you're writing about their challenges, and you're doing it, but you're not getting there deeply enough." And she kept sending me back to the woodshed over and over again to go back to work, and it was tough. And once I think I got the point of view down, the structure was a bear. Um, it's just a much different challenge. In memoir, I do what I call puzzle piece. I write pieces of the memoir that I want to write, but it doesn't come in a linear fashion. I write the pieces that call to me first. And then when I get enough, I kind of piece them together in a way that I think is going to make the most sense structurally. I can't do that in fiction. I have to approach it in a much more linear fashion because you have to know where you're going day to day and month to month. So at the end, I hope both have made me better. I think writing nonfiction has made my dialogue and point of view stronger in fiction. I think writing fiction has made my use of setting and environment much stronger in my nonfiction.
Wow, that's a great answer. And in terms of the puzzle pieces, do you print them out and put them on the floor? Or because I've heard Maggie Smith told me she does that. And I said, oh, I think I need to do that.
It's interesting. A lot of authors that I know, especially nonfiction writer or thriller writers, mystery writers, they approach it much more like a screenwriter. You put it down so that you can see it, and then kind of shape shift it as you want. I do it. I do it more on my laptop, but I'm a notorious post-it note taker, like an insane person, because that's how I grew up. I'm like you. So if I can do this, but if I start to do this, it really connects me back to when I was a young writer and you were, diary-esque kind of getting all of your thoughts down. So I tend to do that and then kind of put them everywhere. It'll be on my desk, or I have this massive screen and I'll put it on my screen so I can actually see it. And then I start moving it around. But you do need that. Once you can see it, it's not so overwhelming, like it's like what I talked about. It's like running a marathon. Once you do 10 miles, you can do the 26.2.
So for the magic season in particular, I really learned so much about you. And I see your journalism woven throughout in how you talk about baseball. And you bring the history in and the statistics and the particular games. Did you feel that you really employed your journalism tactics so strongly in that book in terms of the structure of it?
Very, very much so. I had a really strong sense of how, and structure's hugely important to me. And I think one of the most overlooked things, especially for emerging writers and authors, we tend to, I believe, think that we have to approach everything in a strictly linear fashion. It can be that way in nonfiction. I think starting memoirs think, oh my gosh, I'm going to write a biography like Clinton or Truman, and it's got to take this from birth to death, which is what I did in my first memoir. You don't have to do that. Structure, and I don't want to get too off topic, but structure can change truly how you approach a book. And I knew with Magic Season exactly how I wanted to approach it because I was watching the last game I was ever going to watch with my father, and I knew it. And I thought, my gosh, the structure of a baseball game is really just like life itself. You get a certain number of innings to win or lose. It's never a tie. There is no time limit on baseball. It'll go until there's a final result. So I knew very closely how I wanted to structure Magic Season. And I did. I'm a baseball lover, and there was so much about it, statistics and the way the game is played, and that so many just casual fans I don't, we just kind of overlook in watching a game, that my father taught me that I believed and hoped would really bring home the beauty of baseball and shared connection of sports. Being a journalist helps me every single day. When I write about setting in my novels and I visit different resort towns in Michigan where all my novels are set, I'll have an event, and if there's a setting that inspires me, I hit the streets before or after it. I talk to locals on the street. I talk to people that are attending an event. I'm just like, what do you love about this place? What do you hate about it? What's it like in February? Where do you get your favorite glass of wine? Where's your favorite pie? Did your grandmother grow up here? And all of that gives you a three-dimensional view on something that really helps in the long term. It makes you truly understand a story, just like we did with journalists. We talked to everybody on the street to get a sense of what was going on, what's happening.
Yeah, and I honed my teeth on service journalism at Woman's
Ah,
World magazine. And so I completely understand because it's service to the reader. It's setting it up and structuring it in such a way. And I think that a lot of writers don't understand how important, to your point, structure is.
hugely, hugely important. Every single book that I write, one of the first things I think about is structure. You look at my nonfiction, Confessions of a Prep School Mommy Handler is centered at a prep school where I worked, one of the most elite prep schools in the nation, where I was called the mommy handler. I was a PR director, but I essentially knew how to charm the mothers enough to keep them out of the administration's hair. And it's structured in a fall semester and a spring semester, just like a school year. Just I evolved along with the kids during that year. I wrote a memoir called At Least in the City, Someone Would Hear Me Scream. It's about moving from the city to the woods in Michigan, where we now live. And it's all around the tenets of Thoreau. I wanted to be like a modern day Thoreau. I thought moving to the woods and the wilderness would center me. It didn't. It was a nightmare. We moved in the winter. It sucked. The resort town was shut down. We had a country store that sold ammunition. There was nothing. So I humorously structured around the tenets of Thoreau. You look at Magic Season, it's inning by inning of a baseball game. And same way in fiction, flashbacks, how you structurally approach it, it allows you to kind of creatively hang your hat from the beginning and forces you to think differently about your storyline and how you want to approach it.
Yes, I want to segue to through lines from that description of structure because you have so many through lines going through your book. Some of them are consistent, like family and
Yeah.
finding self-value. There's a spiritual element
Right.
that goes through. And I know that you had mentioned that you had done your first three memoirs, and then maybe the world wasn't ready for your next memoir. And so you were dealing with kind of, all the bases were loaded, but you weren't getting that momentum. And then you went, I believe it was like you were cleaning out your father's house and you found a chest or you found things that your grandmother, who was so beloved to you, had collected, including her charm bracelet and recipe box. And that day you had a spark and you thought, oh, that's what I want to write about in terms of fiction. So you made this whole decision to change your focus, change your name to your grandmother's name. And I think it was Wendy also. Wendy Sherman said to you, are you off your meds? But ended up supporting you. And how did that all, I mean, you were in a dire strait, you felt, because you'd had
Yeah.
enormous success. And then as these cyclical things happen, sometimes you were, the universe was pushing you towards your next act.
Yeah, it's so beautifully said and a great question. Yes, I felt like my career might be over. There was a memoir I'd written that I couldn't sell. And publishing is hard, and it is always shifting and changing and facing challenges that I think, you have to be aware of in this industry to stay on top of the game or ahead of the curve. And, there were mergers going on. The imprints that I belonged to were dissolving. The editors and editorial directors that I knew, had been working with and loved, were being fired. There were massive changes, and there still are. And it shook me to my core, and I really didn't know what to do. I didn't think I could write fiction, was the biggest part of it. I didn't think I could do it. You talk about their fear always comes back into it, I think, for artists, for everybody, especially for artists. And I didn't know if I could do that. And I'd always been a huge fiction reader. I mean, from early on, Pat Conroy, Dorothea Benton Frank, Jane Green was a huge influence, Emily Giffin. I'd always read and loved that type of fiction, but I didn't know if I could do it. I was helping my dad move into a smaller home. He had early dementia, and I found all my grandmother's heirlooms. And it really did hit me that I didn't read a lot of stories about women like her. Good, strong women, sometimes of a certain age. It's shocking in publishing. 50 plus as a main character. Don't do it, I was told. And it just struck a chord with me. And I've always been a big believer. And I think much like you, if something calls to you, believe it. If something is resonating with you, if you hear a voice, my mother and grandmother used to call them God winks. You can call them whatever you want. Don't ignore it, because most of our life is spent ignoring those winks. Those callings are gifts, and we don't believe in them. So we alter our course and do something else. And that day, I was so emotional and so lost that I think everything kind of struck at once. It was like a lightning strike. And I did. I started writing the charm bracelet on top of a cardboard box. And you have to listen to that. And to me, storylines, through lines always start for me with a question. It's a question that I'm seeking to ask and answer in my own life, and that I think others are seeking an answer to as well. Magic season was a lot about it. We talk about baseball and my father, but it was, how much time do we really have in this life? How much how much do we exhaust ourselves by hating and blaming? And how do we, I know there's often a line drawn in the sand that we don't cross when ones have hurt us or wronged us, but if we take a step, can that actually allow us to have closure and unconditional love? Those were the big questions. I did it with the charm bracelet is another one about time as well. We get so busy and lost in this world. What if we just stopped and remembered those simple things that used to connect us as kids, those things that we forget? That's how I start.
I love the structure of the charm bracelet because you have each chapter focused on a charm, but also how it impacts the different characters. And it all starts, well, I don't want to give it away, but it starts with a charm bracelet that had family history and was impactful on Lolly, the main protagonist, I would say. And the through line, it would lead to the next. Like if you're talking about the kite charm, then there would be a transition to how it freed Lolly's daughter, and then the story of that. And so it didn't feel separated like anecdote. It had connective threads, even in the words that you used and the way that you ended a sentence of one chapter and started the next one. And that's craft. That's something that, you learn. And I also think that from that to your most recent novel, Famous in a Small Town, I cried at that one because I felt the sense of mortality that was so essential. So it must have been very important to you to imbue your writing with it. And as somebody who has a teenage daughter now and, lots of transitions happening, I think that that is really powerful.
The structure of the charm bracelet didn't really come to me until one night. I was about 100 pages in. You talk about structure. And I truly had my grandmother's charm bracelet. It's sitting right over there. We have it around an old McCoy vase that was hers, and we put flowers in it every a couple of days. But I had their charm bracelet by my bedside, and I woke up. You know how you do when you have an idea, about to fall asleep, and I'm like, "You're an you're an idiot. Why don't you just structure it around every charm?" To me, it answers what you just said. I love writing what I call the ghosts on people's shoulders. We meet people every single day of our lives, and they give us an impression of who they want us to believe that they are. They give us the aura and the facade of who they want us to believe they are. But until we start digging and getting to know them and asking questions that we start to see those ghosts on their shoulders, their history, the past, their decisions, good and bad, that have made them who they are. And In fiction, I love doing that because you can have flashbacks or backstories that are an important part of the through line, that are connective threads that allow you in the present, in the current moment of a character's life and a book, to throw you back into the past and show you how they came to be that person that's saying and doing that right then. You need that perspective to understand how we all become who we do. And that's one of my favorite things of writing fiction, is that we're all allowed to do that. We can explore characters, but we're really exploring the deeper interior of ourselves, shining a light as deeply as we can on our soul to show how we became these beautiful, complex, crazy creatures that we are.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I'm glad that we're exploring this aspect of craft. And do you kind of add in the ghosts on the shoulder as you go along, or does it evolve as you're writing? Are you kind of channeling the characters, or do you think you have an outline, then you're like, oh, now I have to go and put this in? Like, how does that process work for you?
I have a very loose outline. I'm certainly not the quintessential plotter. I really do have a question that I ask. I keep a post-it to keep me focused on my laptop. What is the bigger question that you're always trying to answer? And I do character outlines to start. I always have to know my characters in fiction as well as I know the people that I write about in my nonfiction, because I know them. I grew up with them. I love them. They drive me crazy. So I have to know my fictional characters just as much. And then I start. I always just write. I say this to every writer. A writer says, I just finished my first draft, and I'll be like, congrats, you got 20 more. And it's true. And editing is as big a part of writing as writing. But I don't typically edit edit as I write. I think they're very different processes. So I push through creatively because I'm lost in the story. I'm lost in the characters. I get so lost that Gary, we joke, he will put a rug down and I won't notice that he's put it down for 6 months. That's how lost I get. And it's not fancy when I go through a manuscript, but I will put deeper backstory in red capital letters, or this stinks, or horrible dialogue, whatever it is, because I know it's wonky and I know it needs improved, but I also want to keep pushing on. And then when I finish and go back through it, I really slower down. And I reflect greatly on these characters, even more so on their past. And I start to add in a lot of these backstories and these scenes that make them more complicated, that make the story more interesting, that allows the reader to kind of evolve along with them. So it's, probably the rewrite is longer than the initial write, but it's how I do it. And every writer is different. And I always say, we can give advice, but do what feels good for you. You can't straight jack out with advice.
I agree. Is there a character who is not a female protagonist that you identify with? And I'm going to kind of posit a guess. I think Ollie in Famous in a Small Town might be the one in that book, at least.
Yeah, no, very much so. Our lives are filled with female friends. We have good man friends, but I was raised by women. My grandmas were my best friends, my great aunts, my cousins, my aunts, my mom. All of our best friends are women, and they share every secret with us. I think this, things that they probably don't share a lot with others, maybe a few female friends, but we are their trusted souls and advisors. And I've been that way since I was a baby. I would go to the beauty salon, as I talked about at Irma, and hear the stories that my grandmothers told, and all of the women in the salon set told each other. And I hold those close to my heart because as a gay man, so many of their your pain and struggles are my own. They're very parallel. So I take telling your stories very personally. And the men, I try to pattern a lot after myself. And I think there's a lot of bad men in fiction. There's a lot of good men in the world. And I like to pattern a lot of those off of my own characteristics, or Gary, or some of our best friends. They're not by any means saviors to my female characters, but they do see the characters for who they truly are and empower them, I hope, to be the people they've always dreamed of being.
Yes, I think that's a big theme in your book. Sometimes the bad characters or the ones that aren't so great don't see people as they really are. And the
Exactly.
ones that forge those emotional connections with the protagonists or, the main characters, they're the ones who see someone. And when you're really seen by someone, that is that feeling that it's just indescribable. I'll just give a little personal story. When my husband proposed to me, he wrote a list of 10 things he loves about me. And the last one, and the thing, I mean, the deal was sealed, but he said, because you're always you.
Oh, make me cry. That's beautiful. And that's all we want, isn't it? That's all we want.
It
And
is.
it's rare. I said this at Irma too. That is the true meaning to me, and probably the biggest through line of my, especially my fiction and nonfiction, is unconditional love. Being loved unconditionally. And as I always preach, most of us are loved with conditions. We're told, I will love you if you change, or if you act like this, or I'll do this and I will love you even more. Or we love with conditions because we're scared of being hurt. What he wrote to you, that should be the tenet of our lives, because that's all we desire to be. And we change our entire existence to try and please people, and we end up changing the foundation of who we are, and that's a shame.
Beautiful. And, speaking of foundation of who you are, you're an Ozark boy. You came from the Ozarks and, beer was what you drank. And now you have wine and words with Wayne and you're a wine connoisseur.
Words with Wade, yeah, I do it every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. I'll have you on. We're gonna chat and talk, and it's a blast. It's what you do with a drink, basically.
My husband's a huge wine connoisseur and he
uh,
has taught me. He gets something called wine text. It started during the pandemic. I'll have to share the info, but I love it and I love what you do. And I recently saw the episode that you did with Bob Eckstein, who's such a talented and wonderful soul, and he was on my program also. Okay, so Wade, you have this steel in your spine from being an Ozark boy, right? And you talk about that, what you got from your dad. So I think what's so fascinating about you is we're in a world in publishing where there's so many dystopian books, how dark the world is. And you have this wonderful thread of optimism, even with like the darkness, which you do acknowledge in many ways, in the things the women have dealt with in your books and the things you dealt with. But yet there's this feeling of belief. And I think it's also the part of you that's your mother, that the world, and she was a hospice nurse. And so, see, I did a deep dive into you as a journalist does,
Good.
right, as you do. And so you have this sense of inspiration and hope imbued in your books. And I think we need that so much in this world. I really do.
Thank you. In publishing today, there does seem to be a higher level of esteem placed on, you said dystopian novels, books that I think distance from emotion. Some of my books have been critiqued for being overly sentimental, or especially in nonfiction, I I tend to be too emotional. And I think that is a world where many critics have been hurt. And so they want to see the world as they see it, which is from a distance. I am not a believer in that. I don't know if I, and I don't mean to overstate this, but I don't know if I would be alive today if I didn't believe in the goodness in this world and the goodness in other people. I've been incredibly, like all of us, hurt by people, damaged by people, wounded by people. You know, I've tried to harm myself in the past, and I still believe in all of the goodness that we have to offer. You know, in writing the book about my father, the one thing I did not want to do for all the wrongs he did to me was do him a disservice by placing all of the blame on him. As you said, I grew up in the Ozarks. I'm a tough guy. I can be bitter. I can walk away. I can steel myself from all the pain. And that's how I lived for many, many years. And it got me nowhere. It was by opening up my heart again, by wanting to be loved, by seeking love, by agreeing to be hurt by people in this world, that things started to change. We talked about it, unconditional love. My mother taught me that. My grandmother taught me that. And I think once you fully embrace that, then the world can change for you. And I will never change writing those types of books. I I receive, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of notes and emails a week, a month from readers that need some rope of hope to continue on. It could be from loss or loss of a job. It could be from childhood pain, whatever it is, fights with neighbors, fights with female friends. They need something, some thread to hold on to that they know it's going to be okay. And in this world, it is hard to find. It's hard to find in the media, it's hard to find in social media, it's hard to find sometimes in literature. And if I can do that honestly and transparently, that's what I want to do. And that will never change in my work.
That's beautiful. I just want to end because you're a writing teacher as well. And can you give a few craft tips for people writing, whether it's memoir or novel, that will just help them in their journey?
There's a ton, and there are probably some you've heard. One is going to be write. I've met a lot of writers that say they want to write and they don't write. And, a lot of it is just sitting down and doing it. You don't get better at anything that you don't do on a daily basis. My first book, I got up at 4 a.m. to write. I didn't have, my job was so busy. I would go until 9 at night. I had no other time. It made me better. The other, I believe, that we touched on is overcoming fear. Fear blinds us, it paralyzes us, it stops us cold from pursuing a dream. And especially in writing, I always say bad things happen from here to here because we start to overthink everything, or we become insanely frightened of what we want to say. So we alter it. We alter our voice from here to please everyone else but ourselves. We also give in to the whims of everyone else. You start to write and you think, I got to get dinner on the table. Kids got to go to soccer practice. I better mow the yard. I have a real job I better focus on. And so we alter before we even really start. So a lot of it is just kind of realigning yourself to believe that you can do it and sitting down to do it. The voice is finding your voice is a toughie. We spend our entire lives typically wanting to please the world. So it starts when we're very young. I did it. I wanted to be popular in school. I wanted kids to like me. So I altered my personality to fit what they needed. I'd be the funny friend. I'll be the one that does whatever they want. We kind of continue that, especially in relationships. I'll that guy kind of likes me, so I'll be who he wants me to be. it ends disastrously, we lose that voice. We've been given this beautiful gift of uniqueness that we scrub and wash until it's nothing. And we have to reclaim that at some point. We have to find that, especially as a writer, you have to reclaim that so you can just be your authentic self. And that doesn't matter if it's nonfiction or fiction. We talked about structure. That's a biggie for me. Give structure some real thought. How do you want characters, storyline, plotted out, whatever you need to do, but give the structure of the story some real thought, because it will change it greatly and probably for the better. And from a professional point of view, it also tends to give the publisher a rack on which they can, hang your book. So it allows them to picture it more creatively, and marketing and PR, how they're going to do it. It sounds a little crass, and that was not my intentional thought in the beginning, but it does. It helps them, it really gives them kind of a marketing plan on how they want to approach it. Be professional. It's not a craft fair. Finding an agent, getting your book published, these people are professionals. When you write a query letter, this is your big job interview. Prepare for it. They want to know that you're in it for the long haul. They want to know that you have a second book. They want to know that you can present yourself well. They don't make $1 off of anything that they don't sell. So, just approach it professionally. So many people do not. Know you're going to be rejected. Know that's part of the game. I would say see that as a way to strengthen your soul and your spine, make it work for you, go in a different direction, and also listen to that advice. If busy people are telling you things, they're saying it for a reason. Listen to yourself, but also heed that advice as well. I could go on.
Look, your hard-earned wisdom informs everything that you do and everything that you teach. And you wouldn't be who you are without it. And your work wouldn't be what it is without it. So you just evolved so much. And I see it even from one, the charm bracelet to your latest book. I see the depth continually increasing. And in talking to you, I see so much depth. So I'm just so happy to know you, to know your work, to have it out there in the world. And it's such a blessing. And I know that Viola Shipman is smiling up there in heaven and having a cherry chip piece of
She is right now, and and what you do is an incredible service to writers. We all look for places where we can go, not only to feel a sense of community, but belonging, but also solid advice, because there's so many that don't think this can be done, and it can be. And if you want any advice, it's to believe that you can write something, a book, an essay, a magazine article that will help propel you. You have to believe you can do it.
And when you were first starting, you wrote a letter to Irma Bombeck, and you still have that answer. And can you just share for my audience what that answer was?
Let's keep writing, keep laughing, and keep believing. And that's exactly the best advice that anyone can get. You get your writing noticed, just don't stop.
You mentioned get your writing notice. I love that. That's my book. Anyway, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure, Wade.
Thank you for having me.
Follow me at estelleserasmus.com on my website and on social media, which is Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Estelle S. Erasmus. And we're now on YouTube for Freelance Writing Direct. Follow along, and soon everyone will be reading what you're writing.